What happens when a working royal walks into Britain's most outspoken daytime chat show, thinking he can control the conversation? In just 24 seconds, one comment about media responsibility would trigger the most explosive meltdown ever witnessed on live television, leaving viewers speechless as Prince Harry stormed off the Loose Women set after host Kaye refused to back down from her tough questions about his public complaints. The ITV studios buzzed with unusual energy that Tuesday morning. Prince Harry had agreed to appear on Loose Women to discuss his upcoming charity work. But what started as a routine promotional interview quickly descended into television chaos that would have producers scrambling and viewers glued to their screens. Kaye sat confidently in her center chair, flanked by fellow panelists Ruth Langsford, Janet Street Porter, and Colleen Nolan. The show's signature purple and pink backdrop gleamed under the studio lights as cameras rolled for what everyone assumed would be another pleasant celebrity chat. "Right then, we're back with Prince Harry," Kaye announced with her trademark warm smile. "Now, Harry, you've been quite vocal recently about wanting privacy for your family, but here you are promoting your latest venture. Some might say that seems a bit contradictory." Prince Harry shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his media-trained smile faltering slightly. "Well, Kaye, I think there's a difference between controlled media appearances and the constant intrusion we face daily." Ruth Langsford leaned forward, her years of presenting experience evident in her composed demeanor. "But surely you understand that public interest comes with the territory? Your grandmother managed it for 70 years without complaint." The prince's jaw tightened visibly. "I don't think it's fair to compare different generations. The media landscape has changed dramatically." "Has it, though?" Janet Street Porter interjected, her distinctive voice cutting through the studio atmosphere. "Or have expectations changed? Your father dealt with intense scrutiny for decades." Colleen Nolan nodded in agreement. "My family's been in the public eye too, love. We've learned you can't have it both ways. Either you're public or you're private." Prince Harry's composure began to crack. "You don't understand the level of harassment my wife faces daily. The racist undertones, the constant criticism." Kaye maintained her professional stance, refusing to be intimidated by royal protocol. "But, Harry, many working mothers face criticism. What makes your situation so different that you feel entitled to special treatment?" "Special treatment?" Prince Harry's voice rose slightly. "We're talking about basic human decency here." "Are we, though?" Ruth pressed gently but firmly. "Or are we talking about wanting the benefits of royal status without the responsibilities?" The studio audience sat in stunned silence, sensing the growing tension between the panelists and their royal guest. Camera operators zoomed in as Prince Harry's face reddened with obvious frustration. Janet Street Porter, never one to shy away from difficult questions, continued the line of inquiry. "You've made millions from deals criticizing your own family. How is that taking the high road?" "That's completely unfair," Prince Harry snapped, his royal training abandoning him entirely. "You're twisting everything I say." Colleen Nolan's maternal instincts kicked in, though her words remained direct. "We're not twisting anything, love. We're asking the questions your subjects want answered." "Subjects?" Prince Harry's voice dripped with disdain. "That's exactly the outdated thinking that needs to change." Kaye sensed the interview spiraling but pressed forward with journalistic integrity. "So you're saying the British people shouldn't expect accountability from their royals?" "I'm saying the British people should expect honest reporting, not this tabloid-style interrogation," Prince Harry shot back, his frustration now fully visible. Ruth Langsford maintained her calm professionalism despite the prince's increasingly hostile tone. "This is hardly tabloid journalism, Harry. These are legitimate questions about your public statements." The tension in the studio became palpable as Prince Harry glared at each panelist in turn. His media handlers, visible in the wings, shifted nervously as their carefully orchestrated appearance crumbled before their eyes. "You're all just part of the same toxic system," Prince Harry declared, his voice echoing through the studio. "You pretend to be different, but you're feeding the same beast that destroyed my mother." A collective gasp rose from the studio audience. The panelists exchanged quick glances, recognizing they had reached a crucial moment in the interview. Janet Street Porter, unfazed by the emotional manipulation, responded with characteristic directness. "That's a serious accusation, Harry. Are you saying we're responsible for media harassment?" "I'm saying you're all complicit in perpetuating harmful narratives," Prince Harry replied, his anger now fully unleashed. Kaye knew she had reached a pivotal moment. Her years of experience hosting live television had taught her when to push forward and when to pull back. but something in Prince Harry's entitled demeanor triggered her protective instincts for her show and her colleagues. "Now hold on just a minute," Kaye Adams said firmly, her Scottish accent becoming more pronounced as her patience wore thin. "You came on our show voluntarily. Nobody forced you here. If you can't handle honest questions about your public statements, then maybe you shouldn't be making them in the first place." Prince Harry's eyes widened in shock. Clearly, he had never been spoken to so directly by a television host. "Excuse me? Do you know who you're speaking to?" The studio fell dead silent. Even the camera operators stopped their subtle movements, sensing they were witnessing television history in the making. "I'm speaking to a guest on my show who seems to think his title gives him the right to insult my colleagues," Kaye replied without missing a beat. "Your rank doesn't intimidate me, love. This is my studio, and these are my rules." Ruth Langsford watched the exchange with professional fascination, her decades of live television experience telling her this was either going to be brilliant or catastrophic. "Harry, perhaps we should take a step back here." "No." Prince Harry stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the studio floor. "I don't have to sit here and be lectured by a bunch of middle-aged women who have never faced real scrutiny in their lives." The collective intake of breath from the studio audience was audible. Janet Street Porter's eyebrows shot up in disbelief while Colleen Nolan's mouth fell open in shock. "Middle-aged women?" Kaye Adams rose from her chair, her voice dangerously calm. "Did you just dismiss 4 accomplished journalists as middle-aged women? As if our gender and age somehow disqualify us from doing our jobs?" Prince Harry realized his mistake immediately, but his pride prevented him from backing down. "That's not what I meant." "Oh, but it is exactly what you meant." Janet Street Porter interjected, her voice sharp with indignation. "You waltz in here expecting us to fawn over you, and when we don't, you resort to sexist insults." "I did not insult anyone," Prince Harry protested weakly, though his reddening face suggested otherwise. Colleen Nolan found her voice, her Liverpudlian accent thick with emotion. "You just dismissed our entire careers because we dared to question your behavior. That's not very progressive of someone who claims to champion equality." The irony was not lost on anyone in the studio. Here was a man who had built his post-royal brand on supporting women's rights, now attacking female journalists for doing their jobs. Ruth Langsford maintained her composure, though her voice carried a steely edge. "Harry, you're making this much worse for yourself. Perhaps an apology would be appropriate." "Apologize?" Prince Harry's voice cracked with disbelief. "For what? For expecting professional courtesy from professional journalists?" "Professional courtesy?" Kaye Adams stepped closer to her guest, her 5'4" frame somehow commanding the entire studio space. "You mean the courtesy of letting you dictate the conversation? The courtesy of not asking difficult questions? That's not journalism, that's propaganda." Prince Harry's face turned an alarming shade of red. "How dare you speak to me like this? I am still a member of the royal family, and I'm still a working journalist." Kaye shot back immediately. "Your title doesn't exempt you from accountability, especially not when you're sitting in my chair, on my show, in my studio." The power dynamic had completely shifted. What began as a routine celebrity interview had transformed into a masterclass in journalistic integrity, with Kaye Adams demonstrating that no one, regardless of their status, could intimidate her into compromising her professional standards. "This is outrageous," Prince Harry sputtered, looking around the studio as if seeking support from someone, anyone. "I was assured this would be a friendly conversation about my charity work." Janet Street Porter laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the tension. "Friendly doesn't mean uncritical, love. If you wanted a puff piece, you should have gone to a different show. Or hired your own production company," Colleen Nolan added with a slight smirk. "Oh wait, you already did that." The studio audience began to murmur among themselves, sensing the interview was completely off the rails. Prince Harry's handlers in the wings were frantically trying to catch the attention of the production team, making throat-slashing gestures to end the segment. "You're all being deliberately difficult," Prince Harry accused, his voice rising to an almost petulant whine. "This isn't how interviews are supposed to go." "According to who?" Kaye Adams challenged, crossing her arms. "According to your media training? According to your carefully crafted image management? Real journalism means real questions, Harry. If you can't handle that, then perhaps you shouldn't be doing interviews at all." The prince looked genuinely bewildered, as if he had never encountered resistance to his narrative before. His carefully constructed public persona was crumbling in real time, broadcast live to millions of viewers across the United Kingdom. Ruth Langsford recognized the signs of a complete meltdown approaching. "Harry, why don't you sit back down and we can discuss this calmly?" "Calmly?" Prince Harry's voice reached a new octave. "There's nothing calm about this ambush. You invited me here under false pretenses just to attack me." "We invited you here to talk," Kaye Adams replied evenly. "Talking involves questions and answers, not just you delivering prepared statements while we nod along like bobbleheads." "That's it," Prince Harry declared, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. "I don't have to tolerate this disrespect from anyone, least of all from daytime television hosts who think they're investigative journalists." The final insult hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. Kaye Adams felt something snap inside her chest, a protective rage for her profession, her colleagues, and every hardworking journalist who had ever been dismissed by someone who thought their status made them untouchable. "Right then," Kaye said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more authority than any shout could have managed. "If that's how you really feel about daytime television and the people who work in it, then you can get off my show right now." Prince Harry blinked rapidly, clearly not expecting such a direct confrontation. "What did you just say to me?" "You heard me perfectly well," Kaye Adams stepped forward, pointing toward the studio exit with unwavering determination. "You've insulted my colleagues, dismissed our profession, and shown complete contempt for everyone in this building. I'm asking you to leave." The studio fell into complete silence. Even the hum of the cameras seemed muted as everyone processed what they were witnessing. Ruth Langsford sat frozen in her chair, while Janet Street Porter and Colleen Nolan watched with mixture of shock and admiration as their colleague took on a member of the royal family. "You cannot kick me off your show," Prince Harry stammered, his face now purple with indignation. "Do you have any idea what this will mean for your career?" "My career will survive just fine without entitled guests who think their birth gives them the right to treat working people like servants," Kaye replied without hesitation. "But your reputation might not survive this tantrum you're having on live television." Prince Harry looked around desperately, seeking support from anyone in the studio. The production crew avoided his gaze, the audience sat in stunned silence, and his own handlers had disappeared entirely, probably calculating damage control strategies. "This is unprecedented," he said weakly, as if invoking the word would somehow restore his authority. "So is your behavior?" Janet Street Porter interjected, finding her voice again. "I've interviewed prime ministers, celebrities, and royalty for 40 years, and I've never seen such a childish display from a grown man." Colleen Nolan nodded vigorously. "My kids behaved better than this when they were teenagers, and that's saying something." Ruth Langsford maintained her diplomatic composure, but her words carried steel. "Harry, you still have a chance to salvage something from this situation. You could apologize, and we could move forward professionally." "Apologize?" Prince Harry's voice cracked completely. "To them? Never. I have nothing to apologize for. They're the ones who ambushed me with hostile questions." "Hostile questions," Kaye Adams repeated slowly, shaking her head in disbelief. "Questions about your public statements. Questions about your contradictory positions. Questions any journalist worth their credentials would ask. If you consider basic accountability hostile, then you're more out of touch than anyone realized." The prince began backing toward the edge of the interview area, his retreat both physical and psychological. "This whole thing has been a setup from the beginning. You never intended to have a fair conversation." "Fair, according to who?" Kaye pressed relentlessly. "Fair means we ask only questions you've pre-approved? Fair means we let you promote your projects without examining your track record? That's not journalism, that's public relations." Prince Harry's handlers finally reappeared in the wings, frantically signaling for him to end the interview and leave immediately. But their charge seemed frozen between his desire to flee and his inability to accept that he had been definitively outmaneuvered by a daytime television host. "I don't have to stand here and take this abuse," he said, though his voice lacked any real conviction. "Then don't," Kaye Adams replied simply. "The door is right behind you. Use it." The simplicity of her statement seemed to break something in Prince Harry's composure entirely. His carefully maintained media persona, built on years of professional training and image management, finally collapsed completely. "This is exactly the kind of toxic behavior that drove my mother to despair," he said desperately, playing his final card. "You're no different from the tabloids that hounded her to death." A collective gasp arose from the studio audience, but Kaye Adams remained unmoved. "Don't you dare use your mother's memory to excuse your tantrum." She was a working royal who understood her responsibilities to the public. She would be embarrassed by this performance. Prince Harry's face went white with shock. Never had anyone spoken to him so directly about his mother, especially not on live television. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. "You have crossed every line," he finally managed to whisper. "The only line I've crossed is the one you drew around yourself to avoid accountability." Kaye shot back immediately. "Your mother faced far worse scrutiny with grace and dignity. You can't handle 4 professional women asking reasonable questions about your public statements." Janet Street Porter seized the moment to drive the point home. She never walked off an interview because someone asked her to explain her choices. She understood that public service meant public accountability. "How dare you compare me to her?" Prince Harry said, his voice breaking with emotion and rage. "We're not comparing you to her," Colleen Nolan said gently but firmly. "You are, and you're coming up short." Ruth Langsford recognized that the interview had reached its absolute breaking point. "Harry, perhaps it's time for you to take a breath and think about how you want this to end." But Prince Harry was beyond rational thought. His entire worldview, built on deference and careful image management, had been shattered by 4 women who refused to play by his rules. He stood there, trembling with rage and humiliation, completely exposed as the entitled, out-of-touch figure he had become. "This interview is over," he declared, though everyone could see he had lost all control of the situation long ago. "Yes," Kaye Adams agreed calmly. "It Island Security will show you out." And with that, Prince Harry turned and stormed toward the studio exit, his footsteps echoing through the silent space as millions of viewers watched a member of the royal family flee from 4 middle-aged women who had refused to bow to his demands for special treatment.